Good evening and welcome to the December 11th, 2018 San Bruno City Council meeting. Call the meeting to order and thank the San Bruno San Bruno Garden Club for the floral arrangement. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
Councilmember Salazar.
Here.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Here.
Mayor Medina.
Here, may I ask Ryan Mersney to lead us in the pledge this evening?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any speaker cards for public comment?
No.
Is there anybody here who did wish to speak under public comment?
Sorry about that. Yes, I have one for Ryan Mersney.
Mr. Mersney. No problem.
Ryan Mersney, Keynes Avenue. I would like to ask the council to pull items 5F and 5G from the consent calendar. In the name of transparency, I believe the issues of such expenditure should be discussed openly and explained to the residents. Combined, these two items account for over 10% of the current budget gap. That's a large portion of our budget gap to just not be discussed openly. While I don't know the entire amount the city spends on outside consultants yearly, I'm a little concerned that none of it can be done by in-house by our staff. We were promised efficiencies and transparency by the council, and I hope in that sense you will pull those two items and explain them to the public. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public that wishes to speak on an item that's not on the agenda? Not. Under announcements, there will be no second city council meeting in the month of December, so therefore our next city council meeting will be in 2019. Under consent.
All items are considered routine or implement an earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested.
Okay, there's a consent. We've had a request for F and G to be removed and to be discussed. And are there any other comments on the other items on consent?
I'll make a motion to approve the remainder.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to articulate.
Oh, I apologize. Yes. I'm sorry?
You want to pull another one?
Okay. Javon first, the city manager.
Sure. Thank you to the mayor and council. I just want to articulate a slight change into the resolution for item 5E. It is the resolution accepting the annual report for development impact fees. Under whereas number 4, it reads as follows. Whereas the city collects below market rate housing in lieu fees on all residential ownership or rental developments of 5 units or more. The reso that was published said of 10 units or more. It's actually a 5. The staff report had the correct number. It was simply a typo in the resolution. So the one you have before you tonight says of 5 units or more.
Okay, that'll be so noted on E. Mr. Medina.
Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's all right.
Pull the TSPC resignation. Is that I?
H.
H, I'm sorry. I just
problem.
lost my page.
H. Okay, that is H, yes.
Please.
Okay, any action on the remainder?
I'll make a motion again to approve the remainder. Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Now we have 3 items that have been asked for discussion or to be pulled for additional information. First one is item F, as in Frank, to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with the professional land services for on-call surveying services in the amount not to exceed $50,000. City manager.
Sure. I'll invite our Public Works Director, Jimmy Tan, to articulate this, but we do not have land surveyors on staff, but I'll let Jimmy articulate more.
Mr. Tan.
Hi, good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Yeah, this contract is for the on-call surveying services. As the city manager mentioned, we don't have, on-call surveying services in-house, and there's a need for it because the city does a lot of design in-house, or starting to do a lot of design in-house, and we're using, we haven't issued proposals every single time we, require surveying services, and it's pretty inefficient for us to do this. So that's the reason why we are requesting an on-call surveying contractor, a consultant at this moment. Anything over, again, the needs for $25,000 will still come to council for approval, but these are small locations where we need to survey to curb ramp designs, intersection designs as part of the TSPC improvements that are required. So these are $3,000 to $5,000, services that we're going to be using for as part of this contract. So, even though it's being requested for $50,000, the city doesn't anticipate the need to use all of it, but we'll be cognizant of what we're going to be using for these services.
Yeah, and I will just add that the funds used for the land surveying will be budgeted in the individual project or existing budgeted funds. So it is not a new allocation of $50,000.
Any questions from council staff? Any action on this item?
Move to approve.
Second. Motion made and seconded to approve item F. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, unanimous. Item G, adopt resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Lotus Water for the development of the city's green infrastructure plan in the amount not to exceed $135,672. Mr. Tan.
Yes, good evening again. This item is regards to the development of the green infrastructure plan, which is a mandate that's required by the municipal regional permit. It's coming from the Regional Water Board for every single agency to develop the GI plan is what we're calling it. So the city already had a budget of $150,000 in the CIP to develop this plan, and this plan needs to be completed by June of 2019. And so it's coming around, next year. So the city went ahead and issued a request for proposal to different consulting firms, and the city received 4 proposals for this project, and actually 3 proposals for this GI plan, and then we evaluated the proposals, and it's currently awarding the contract to Lotus Water because they are the most qualified consultant to develop this the GI plan.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Any action?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve item G. All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Next item. Item H, accept a resignation from the Traffic and Safety Parking Committee member effective November 27, 2018, and direct the city clerk to post a notice of vacancy in accordance with state law. Mr. Medina.
2 reasons to pull this. First, appreciating Jessica Barnes-Lopez's years of service on the Traffic Safety Parking Committee, and a reminder to those in the audience or those people that may be interested in pursuing being on the Traffic Safety Parking Committee, you have until January
18th,
18th
2019.
to apply with the city clerk. So hopefully some people will think about stepping up, finding a way to improve the safety in your neighborhood and around San Bruno.
And I will also, for the city clerk as well, anybody, and they accept applications for all the committee commissions and boards annually. It doesn't have to be for a vacancy, so it can be on file, and then if that should occur, you'll be notified to see if that application is still valid. So if over the holidays something moves you to want to apply, you don't have to wait for an opening. So any action on that?
Motion to approve with the
Second.
council's gratitude.
Motion made and second, and appreciation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Conduct of business.
Item 6A, adopt resolution approving design, authorizing the city manager to execute a construction contract with KC Construction Incorporation for the Arbor Court Pressure Regulating Valve Replacement Project in the amount of $369,060, approving a construction contingency of $56,000, appropriating $146,000 from the Water Fund, and approving a total budget in the amount of $546,060.
Mr. Tam.
Yeah, good evening again, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. So as the City Clerk mentioned, this item in front of you tonight is to award a construction contract for a pressure regulating station project. So this is the recommendation, as the City Clerk mentioned, is to approve the design and to authorize the City Manager to execute a contract with KC Construction for the project in the amount of about $369,000, approving a construction contingency of about $56,000, and then appropriating about $146,000 from the Water Fund. So before I go into the detail about this project, I'd like to provide some information about the pressure regulating stations. The city has a total of 28 pressure regulating stations in our water distribution system, and at each of these stations, there's a valve similar to what you see on the bottom right-hand corner that regulates the flow of water before it reaches the homes. So what the valve does is it reduces the flow of water from high pressure to low pressure, thus providing the residents with a more reliable water system, and that prevents the the sudden spikes or drops in the pressure. So the regulating station that we're replacing is located at the intersection of Arbor Court and Greenwood Way. The existing station is in a vault underneath the sidewalk, and it consists of a 6-inch regulating valve and a 2-inch bypass valve. The new station will be located within the street, approximately 6 feet from the existing vault, and consists of an 8-inch regulating valve and a 4-inch bypass valve. So the increase in valve size for the new station will help improve the fire flows and also allows the city flexibility in providing water to a different pressure zone during an emergency if needed. In addition to the replacement of the regulating station, the SCADA capability will be added to this location. SCADA stands for the Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. So what it does, what the SCADA components usually are installed to allows staff to monitor the upstream and downstream pressure of these stations. So what the SCADA will trigger an alarm if the downstream pressure spikes above the operating set point, and this allows the staff to quickly respond and immediately assess the issue. So staff has coordinated with PG&E to provide a new power connection to the SCADA unit, as well as San Bruno cable to provide communication and connection. And then red curb is about 15 feet is being proposed for future maintenance access as well. So in order to select the contractor, the project was advertised back in October 2018 here, and notice to bidders were sent to 52 contractors. A total of 4 bids were received and opened on November 14th, and the table shows all the bid amounts of the 4 bidders, which ranges from about $370,000 to about $630,000. So the lowest bid was received by KC Construction in the amount of $369,060, which is about $56,700 less than the engineer's estimate. And staff reviewed the bid materials and determined that the bid submitted is responsive. The firm has experience with the construction of these pressure regulating stations. In 2015, the firm completed the construction of 2 regulating stations for our city that were connected to San Francisco PUC pipelines. I'll show some pictures of it in the next couple of slides. In addition to the regulating stations, the firm completed another project, which is the Trenton Sewer Replacement Project. Staff is pleased with their work performance and recommends awarding the project to KC Construction. There was one minor oversight in regards to awarding the contract to KC. Tonight, the city's normal process is to issue the notice of intent to award to contractors and allow a period of 5 days for potential bid protest. If the city council chooses to award the project tonight, the staff will be issuing the notice of intent to award tomorrow to contractors, and also hold off on sending agreements to KC until the bid protest period ends. And staff currently doesn't anticipate any bid protest on this project. And like any construction projects, there will be some impacts to residents during construction. Some of those impacts include temporary traffic control, which will be in effect during construction hours, and noise and dust. And staff will work with the contractor to minimize the construction impacts to the neighborhood during construction. So the project, once awarded, it's anticipated to begin construction in next year in February. And just want to show you some pictures of what the last project looked like here. It's a pretty standard, clean installation. It's a prefabricated pressure regulating unit. So the contractor basically excavated a large pit within the location where the regulating station is going to go, and then the entire unit is dropped into the pit, and then the pipeline is connected thereafter. So in regards to the fiscal impact, the city adopted the fiscal year 18-19 budget, which includes this project for an original appropriation of about $400,000. And staff has used about $80,000 of that money for in-house staff design, time, surveying, and electrical consultant services. The total project cost is about $546,000, and which includes all the items that are listed on the slide there. So staff is requesting an appropriation of $146,000 from the water fund. So there are a couple of alternatives tonight. One is to, for the council to not chooses to not to award the project. And the first is, reject all bids and direct the staff to re-advertise the project. Staff believes that the lowest price received from Casey Construction is reasonable based on the comparison with other competitive bids received. And staff does not anticipate the costs for this project to go lower if the project is re-advertised. And the second alternative is to not award the construction contract and to not complete the project, and to direct staff to research alternatives to replace the regulating station. So, however, staff is recommending to council to move forward with this project tonight. So this concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions of council to staff? Marty.
Of the 28 stations, how, we're replacing this one, how does the future look for the remaining 28? These are expensive. Everything's expensive nowadays, and just curious to kind of see where you think we're at with our remaining work that needs to be done with these stations.
Yeah, I don't know the extent of all the various conditions of all the stations. We haven't done a full assessment yet, but in as part of our CIP, there are a total of about 5 stations that are budgeted for the next remaining 5 years. And so we'll be coming to council for additional, contract awards for other PRV stations next year.
So in the graphic with the picture showing that the red curb is there, have we talked to the homeowner, letting them know, hey, maybe we can move that red curb closer to the curb return so that it doesn't take up a full parking space? And then looking at the asphalt and maybe talking to Casey, I did work with them when I was here, of being able to maybe putting in a couple curb ramps there, because they're already going to be there, they're going to be digging, and maybe you could work out some really good deal with them to be able to do that. And the asphalt in that particular area is pretty crocodiled out. So I just wanted to kind of feed that to you, and hopefully you guys can explore about how to minimize the parking impacts and possibly get a 2-for-1 while they're working in that area with the curb return or with the curb ramp.
Right. In regards to the curb ramp, currently, we're not asking for the council to approve the curb ramp at this, not the curb ramp, the red curb at this moment, because we're planning to take that item to TSPC as we normally do, and the residents within around the neighborhood would have an opportunity to state their opinions as they normally do, right, as part of the process. So then we will bring the item back to council approval for the red curbs at a later time, and then it could be shifted.
Right.
Yes, and that's something that we can look at.
Because clearly we can't have a vault with a car parked on it when there's an emergency, that it has to be done that way.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Did you, no, that's okay. Other questions? Is there anybody, any speaker cards, anybody from the audience wanting to speak on this item? No? Okay. Any action from council?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's been a motion and a second on the resolution. City Clerk?
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Medina.
Aye. I move on to our item 7 study session.
Item 7A, receive the draft San Bruno Development Impact Fee Nexus Study and provide direction to staff to finalize the Nexus Study with fees at the staff recommended level and bring the fee ordinance to City Council for their consideration at a future City Council meeting.
Good evening, Honorable
Finance
Mayor
Director.
and City Council members. My name is Keith DeMartini. I'm the Finance Director for the city. It is my pleasure to present an overview of the proposed Comprehensive Development Impact Fee Program, along with our consultant, Jason Moody, from Economic and Planning Systems, or more commonly known as EPS. Thank you.
We're high-tech here.
Okay, great. So the objectives for this evening. Development impact fees are now common and expected in many cities across the state. They have proven to be a funding source relied upon to deliver on municipal capital improvements and are widely considered to be a normal cost of doing business for new development. The implementation of a comprehensive development impact fee program is a major component of the comprehensive fiscal sustainability project that the city manager identified in his presentation to you on November 27th. The objectives for this presentation are shown here. First, I'd like us all to have a shared understanding of the purpose of development impact fees and why cities have them. Next, I'd like to convey the importance of impact fees as a necessary funding source for critical projects in the city of San Bruno. Staff and our consultant have spent months developing the fees based on a number of sources and anticipated city projects. So I'd like us to understand the basis for the proposed fees and staff's recommendations. And finally, I'll show a high-level timeline of the path to adoption. So I will provide a brief overview of the impact fees. Jason Moody, our lead consultant with EPS, will provide an overview of the capital facilities, fees, and revenue projections in the Nexus study. He'll show an illustrative fee calculation for example development projects and discuss existing impact fees the city currently has. And Jason is the managing principal at EPS, and he himself has worked on impact fee programs for dozens of cities across the state. So he has a lot of experience in this area. I will then come back and provide staff's recommendations based on the Nexus study completed by EPS with policy and other considerations for council regarding the fee level and the implementation strategy. So first, I just want to provide a couple slides that gives a high-level overview of impact fees. An impact fee, just by a simple definition, is a one-time fee on new development to pay for new infrastructure improvements required to serve growth. Revenues collected are used to pay for public facilities and infrastructure needed to accommodate the growth in the city in the coming years. Developers pay impact fees. Fees are assessed when applications are submitted, and they are due upon building permit issuance or filing of a subdivision map. The fees are subject to a Nexus study calculation, which requires a reasonable relationship between a government fee and the purpose of its use. Impact fees are set and adopted by the City Council. As noted in the last bullet, the fees themselves do not authorize new development projects. All projects will still require planning approvals, as is the current process. There are many rules regarding how fees are to be used. Fees can only be used for capital, facility, and infrastructure costs. They cannot be used to fund ongoing operations. Fees can only fund new development's fair share of the total project cost based on the rational nexus documented in the Nexus study. In other words, impact fees cannot be used to fund 100% of the total costs of the capital project. The law requires that the City Council approve of the impact fees, the purpose and the use of the fee, the relationship between the need for facilities and the new development, and the proportional costs of the facilities attributable to growth. There is an annual reporting requirement where the City Council will receive a detailed accounting report of impact fee activity, which you actually currently saw this evening. It was on consent calendar item 5E. We will continue to provide that report to you. And there is also a 5-year review of impact fees, of impact fee levels with a subsequent nexus study to ensure that the fees are reset if necessary. There are some economic considerations with these fees. They do add to the cost of new construction and could affect new development actually penciling. The fees do create value in the long run as they fund necessary infrastructure and improvements that support the new development and ultimately improve the quality of life for residents and our visitors. It is important to note that fees do not directly influence the real estate prices. The market forces determine those prices. And it's also noteworthy that most cities in the Bay Area have already adopted fairly robust, comprehensive development impact fee programs. Development in those cities continue to occur, and impact fee revenues go to fund critical municipal infrastructure improvements in those cities. The Nexus study has been provided to you for your review. It includes growth projections to inform development and service population, capital facility needs, cost allocations between new and existing development, and the maximum allowable fee levels and revenue projections. After this evening's meeting, taking your feedback into consideration, staff will work with staff from EPS to finalize the Nexus study. In order to implement the program, we first seek input from City Council. Our immediate next step is to finalize the Nexus study and prepare an ordinance which would actually implement the new fees. The first reading of the ordinance is scheduled to occur on February 12th, and the ordinance would take effect 60 days after adoption. We will also be evaluating the city's current park in lieu fee as it relates to the new community facilities fee to ensure that there's no overlap. So let me now turn it over to Jason to talk about the capital facility fees and projections.
Thank you, Keith. Again, my name is Jason Moody. I'm a managing principal at the firm Economic and Planning Systems. We've done a lot of fee programs here in the Bay Area, including a number in nearby jurisdictions. And so we've been involved in this study and process for a couple years now, actually. I wish it was only a couple months, but it's been a little longer than that. We start out this process by interviewing the department staff to talk about their facility needs, looking at the general plan and the growth projections. And so we talked to pretty much every department and went back and forth with them on what they see the facility needs are. And then after that, we use a variety of techniques to allocate those facility costs to both existing residents and future residents. And so the portion of the fee is the portion that we can realistically or legally attribute to new development. In almost all cases, that's a very small percentage of the total cost. So a fee only will cover a portion of these facility needs. We can go to the next slide. We have identified fee categories: community facilities, which includes parks, library, courtyard, and other facilities; the police, which includes vehicles, an evidence room, and tech upgrades; fire, which is primarily some fire station 51 and 52; general government categories, which in this case includes vehicles as well; emergency operations center, a courtyard, different from the park courtyard. It's more of a general public works courtyard, and some technology upgrades. Transportation and a variety of transportation improvements were included in this fee program, as you can see there. And then finally, some utilities were included: water, storm drainage, and cable. Go to the next one. This calculation shows the maximum allowable fee that came out of our fee calculation. And what we mean by that is that this is the amount you could maximally charge based on the facilities that we include in this fee program. You can always elect to charge less than maximum allowable. I don't think we'll get too many complaints from that. But this is the maximum. We conducted some fee comparisons with other jurisdictions to get a sense of how, and we selected a number of jurisdictions based on staff guidance, among other things. As Keith mentioned, most cities in the Bay Area have fees, and we could have extended this comparison across the whole Bay Area, but that would have been a pretty big table. So we kept it to these, and you can kind of see, I guess, if you look along the top to the residential, the maximum allowable here is not the highest, but it is, it's higher than, say, South San Francisco, less than Millbrae, certainly less than San Mateo, but higher than some of the others. And you can go down the list with the office. The office, industrial, and retail, those are all charged on a per square foot basis, whereas the residential is on a per unit basis. So they're not apples to apples comparisons, as you can see, between residential and office, but they are apples to apples across the comparisons across the cities. The hotel is based on a per room. So, for example, in this case, a new hotel would pay a fee of $7,800. The maximum allowable will be $7,800, versus some of the other comparable cities. That is the one category, other than San Carlos, where the fee is pretty much higher than the peer set, but except for San Carlos. With regard to the other categories, you can kind of see office fee is $17 or $18 a square foot, less than Redwood Cities, and less than San Carlos, but higher than some of the others. We can go to the next one. Oh, good idea. You can see that there. This is the projected fee revenue that would be generated from the fee program by build-out. So it would occur over time as development occurs over the next 20 years or so. As you can see, the total cost of all the facilities was about $440 million. The fee revenue would cover about 30% of that if it all went forward as development occurred along this period of time as projected. So you'd have to come up with additional funding of about 70% of that from other sources. And this is a pretty common from fee programs that we see. Fee programs never cover the full amount of the cost. The 30-70 breakdown that you see here is certainly not uncommon from what we've seen in other jurisdictions. We can go down to the next slide. This is that same slide just showing you the revenue projections by fee category. So the fee revenue would be collected and deposited into various accounts so that the fee has all these different components to it, and those different accounts would generate a different fee amount. So the bottom line, the number total is the same as what I just showed you. You can go. So in illustrative fee calculations here, a single family unit is based on the maximum allowable. Again, as we noted in the earlier slide, would be about $24,000 for a single family unit. And so that would represent an average sale price in your markets about $1.18 million. So that represents about 2% of the home value price, the final sale value. We took an example of a multifamily apartment complex, 200 units. The estimated market value is about $128 million. This is for the whole complex, not per unit. And that's about 4% of the final market value of that project. And on down the line, a 100,000 square foot office project. These are, again, hypothetical projects. It would be, $89 million value. The fee that project would pay would be about $3 million. So again, about 3%. So it ranges from, the fee amount as a percent of the market value, it ranges, from about 2% to upwards of 4% of the market value. To just give you a sense of how much fees are relative to how much they would theoretically sell the project for, or it would be worth. We can get another slide here. You do have existing impact fees. We did include those in those calculations. So those calculations I just showed you include the proposed fee plus the existing fee to get a sense of the total impact. But your current fees, you have a residential affordable housing fee, which you can see there. It happens to be based on a per square foot basis, and you have a commercial linkage fee, which again is based on a per square foot of new floor area. So both of these are per square foot fees, and you can see those ranges in this slide. I'm happy to answer any questions about these. And then you also have an existing park in lieu fee, a Quimby fee, which is calculated in a slightly complicated manner, and the ultimate amount is dependent upon the market value for raw land, because what a Quimby Park and Lieu fee does is it's primarily used for the purchase of land, not for improvements, and so you calculate the fee based on the land price at the time that the fee is charged. So it can vary depending upon that calculation. One of the options, the way the current fee is calculated, it would assume that this Park and Lieu fee would be, this Quimby fee would be replaced, because you certainly don't want to charge developers twice for the same thing. However, there are other options here that can be discussed. For doing this, you could keep your existing Quimby fee, and then you would have to either adjust the park component of this proposed fee to make sure you're not double dipping, if you will. So we could go back and do that if that was the direction. I think that is the last slide for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, so now that we've provided an overview of impact fees, and Jason took us through the maximum allowable fees calculated and the Nexus study details, we reviewed the Nexus study, and staff have weighed various policy considerations to recommend a fee level to council. So although the Nexus study provides the maximum allowable fee for residential and non-residential projects, for each category, the City Council can adopt an ordinance for fees below the maximum allowable level. New development will increase the demand for public facilities and infrastructure, and in turn, new development benefits when public facilities are improved or constructed. The City Council should consider imposing development impact fees that will not stifle the important momentum of development created in the Transit Corridors Plan and other development in the city. Staff reviewed the fee structures by category for comparison cities in San Mateo County. Staff calculated the average fee level by category for our peer cities and compared that against the maximum allowable in the Nexus study. For residential, industrial, retail, and the hotel categories, staff are recommending reducing the fee from the maximum allowable level to the average of the peer cities, as shown on this table. For the office category, staff are recommending the maximum allowable fee. Office development imposes a significant strain on the city's infrastructure, and impact fees will be a vital funding source to ensure that community, police, fire, general government, transportation, and utility capital facility revenues are collected to maintain and enhance these facilities to support the growth. At the time the development impact fee ordinance is presented to the City Council for adoption, there will be a handful of development projects with submitted entitlement applications with the city. Staff recommends that all development projects that have submitted applications to the city that have yet to have their final planning entitlements approved by the date the fees take effect would be subject to the development impact fees. So today is the first public meeting on the city's proposed comprehensive development impact fee program. After gathering input and feedback from City Council, we will work with Jason and his team to finalize the Nexus study, prepare the ordinance, and bring the ordinance back to City Council in February of 2019. If Council adopts the ordinance at the second reading, the fees would take effect 60 days after adoption in late April of 2019. And again, all projects without entitlements by the end of April will be subject to the impact fees. So that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. And Liz, do we have speaker cards?
Yes.
Before we start, just for the record, this afternoon, the City Council, all of us received some emails from Dennis Martin, Scott Williams, and Jamie Choi. So I do want that to be acknowledged that we did receive those, and those have been given to each one of us via email. And now we'll go ahead and open it up for speakers.
Daniel Gregg, followed by Dennis Martin.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Daniel Gregg. I'm a lead representative of the Northern California Carpenters Regional Council. I represent approximately 38,000 carpenters in Northern California. Several of them live and work here in the city of San Bruno. The Carpenters Union is here tonight to ask the Council to take a deep and robust evaluation of how increased impact fees across the board will affect existing developments already established in the entitlement process. We know that not all developments are created equal. That means increased impact fees specifically applied to projects in the entitlement process could have a wide range of effects. The worst case scenario being that the project does not get built, as they mentioned earlier. From a labor perspective, Mills Park is something the Carpenters Union would like to see built. Mills Park brings nearly 400 units, market rate and affordable housing, and over 50,000 square feet of retail. Additionally, Mills Park has substantial labor standards tied to it. And from a labor perspective, that means a lot. That means local hire, the payment of area standard wages and benefits, and apprenticeship training for members to build a career in the construction industry to provide for their families. Again, we would like to see this project entitled and built. In conclusion, we ask that the council insist on a grandfathering policy for developments already in the entitlement process, as other Bay Area jurisdictions have done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Dennis Martin, followed by Jamie Choi.
Good evening. I'm Dennis Martin, speaking on behalf of BIA Bay Area, and I call your attention to our letter submitted today via email to each of the council members and to staff. It's important to know that BIA has been denied adequate opportunity to analyze staff recommendations and the Nexus study since the reports have only been available online since Friday, December 7th. Comments that we make here or in our letter may be elaborated on and amended in the future as we have more time to review the materials and the proposals made by the city. Against a backdrop of the worst housing shortage in Bay Area history, the city is now recommending massive increases in development impact fees that would actually render new market rate and affordable housing projects financially infeasible. The reality is that housing projects throughout the Bay Area are struggling to pencil out because of a perfect storm of high construction costs, rising interest rates, and flattening rent growth. The Turner Center for Housing Innovation at UC Berkeley has concluded individual fees add up and substantially increase the cost of housing. Total fees can amount to anywhere from 6 to 18% of the median price of a new home. We feel it's important for the City Council to be cognizant of the fact that development impact fees and increases in fee rates can and do disincentivize developers. Other major BIA concerns with this proposal include a lack of pipeline exemptions. The city must offer a fair pipeline policy that exempts housing projects that are in the development pipeline by the effective date of a DIF. Lack of outreach. The city should schedule meetings with development stakeholders to improve feedback into the fee levels and implementation. A lack of a total fee load calculation. Total fee loads before and after adoption of the DIF, including BMR, park in lieu, and other fees, must be clearly communicated. The staff report and supporting documents omit this important information. Aggressive and rushed timeline. Staff recommended timeline of steps and dates is much too aggressive. The city must slow down and allow for adequate analysis and feedback by the development community to be factored into the Nexus study and staff recommendations. Lack of a funding plan. The Nexus study and staff report fail to outline how the city plans to pay for over $300 million in facilities and infrastructure not covered by the DIF. A lack of a feasibility study. Feasibility study must be included to analyze all development product types and the impacts of this fee before recommending fee levels. And a substantially deficient Nexus study, as we've outlined in our letter. We've pointed out several problems with it. The methodology and assumptions used in the Nexus study result in an overstatement of the maximum allowable fees that the city can charge consistent with the legal requirements of the Mitigation Fee Act. An extravagant capital improvement project list with over $450 million of improvements, not all of which could be considered necessary.
Mr. Martin, you've reached your 3 minutes. Could you wind up your comments, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
BIA does expect that the city to work closely with the development industry to set fees that are supportable and sustainable. And we want to be able to work with you, so we look forward to your contact with us to provide reasonable solutions for both the city and the development industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jamie Choi.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Choi. I'm here with Signature Land Advisors. First off, thank you for letting us have the opportunity to speak on this important matter to us. We are working as a developer on the Mills Park project that Mr. Gregg alluded to. We've been hired by the G.W. Williams family, who's had a long involvement with the city of San Bruno. The property that we're helping them to redevelop is just north of City Hall, between Angus and San Bruno Avenue, and between El Camino and Linden. They've owned that property for 75 years. They developed the subdivision immediately behind that. They donated the land to the city that City Hall is currently built on. So the Williams family's had a long career in the city and is looking to continue that with this project. They hired us 2.5 years ago when we started this project with the city. We sat down with staff and talked about what type of project the city would like to see built out within the transit corridors plan. We met with community members a number of times and with staff over the years. We went to the Architectural Review Committee last year, and I think a few of you were there at that meeting. We've taken all of that input to heart and redesigned the project, made a number of changes, design changes, architecture changes, put cuts into the building to reduce the massing, incorporated and bought an out parcel that the former planning director was very adamant that we included in the project, which now is. And the project that we have today that we were really looking forward to bringing to you in the next few months because we're getting close to completion after this relatively long process, we're really excited about. It's a little under 400 units. We've committed to providing 15% of those on site as affordable. We have a large grocery tenant in hand that's really excited to come, and we think will provide a great amenity for residents in the neighborhood. As Mr. Gregg mentioned, we're entering into a project labor agreement, so the construction will be all union. And our preliminary economic analysis of the project and its contribution to new property taxes and sales taxes would contribute more than $500,000 annually to the city, aside from these fees. So what I want to talk to you about tonight was what these two previous gentlemen have mentioned and the principle of fairness and the process that we've worked on for the past 2.5 years, working with city staff and the community to design a project, and then now at what we feel is the last minute to be hit with what will add up to $11 million in new fees, which in reality is going to sink this project. So we were excited to bring the project to you in the next few months, as I said, and if this moves forward, then we likely won't be seeing that. So we're urging you and hoping that you hear our concerns regarding grandfathering the project in. We've met with city staff to discuss this, including the finance director and planning director. And I don't want to put words in their mouth, but they seemed open to the potential concepts. And that's all I have to say. We are excited to see this catalytic project come forward and hopefully implement the transit corridors plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Choi. Any other speakers that wanted to speak on this topic? And no other speaker cards. Before I bring it back to council, in regards to the comments were specifically on the signature project, and as was indicated at the last speaker, as far as the discussions that already have been occurring with staff, is what I would encourage that to continue the discussion and address those questions and concerns as already been embarked upon with staff, that be continued with them. Obviously, we won't do it here tonight in front of everybody, so but that can go to that path, and that would be appreciated. Any other comments from staff or anything want to be addressed from the speakers? Comments from council? Questions from council? All the above.
Through the chair, I have a technical question that I don't quite understand, and I apologize for not bringing it forward before because I didn't quite understand what the impact was. So on page 4 of 8, which is in the report, it says the community services, and it has the parks total cost 42 million plus, and then it says total fee revenue 42 million plus. So I thought I understood that you can't do that you can not charge 100% of the cost of capital improvements on things that already exist or that the improvements are already needed.
That was, you have to do a nexus analysis to determine the share of the facility cost that can be attributed to new development.
Right.
In the case of parks, since that is being calculated based on a service standard, not based on identifying these particular things, the service standard meaning the city has a standard of some number of acres per, or amount of park facilities per resident or per 1,000 units. That's one area where you can allocate the new need 100% to growth by the way it's calculated. So it's not completely accurate to say you can't allocate 100% of the cost to new development. You have to do a nexus analysis to determine what proportion of the cost can be allocated to new development, and that's what we've done in our analysis. And for parks, it was the only category where it's really based on a service standard approach. So it's like how many park acres and community facilities per resident. So then you add more residents, you use that same ratio to increase your park needs. So in that particular case, because the methodology we used is based on a service standard approach, you can calculate the incremental park needs to new development at 100%. Does that make sense? It's a little convoluted, but the answer is that the 100% notion is what really should be said there is you have to do a nexus analysis to determine the proportion of the cost that can be allocated to new development. And in most cases, for most facilities, it's less than 100%. In cases where the need of the project is triggered by new development 100%, then you can allocate 100% to new development. So
Okay, I understand that now. Thank you very much. Through the chair, back on the slide, page 12, where you display the different cities along the peninsula, who of these cities actually implemented the impact fees more recently, and who's had them out there the longest?
That's a good question. I can look at these. Milpitas is pretty recent. Let's go down the... I'm sorry, Millbrae. Did I say Milpitas? We did release Milpitas. Is this the list of cities again? Yeah, okay. Millbrae is recent. South San Francisco's has done some of them recently and some of them not, so they've kind of done their fees in a piecemeal way. Same thing for Redwood City. I am not quite sure for all the other ones. I'm pretty sure San Carlos is pretty recent. I would say, though, that most of the cities have an affordable housing fee, just like San Bruno does, and those were implemented and approved separately from their more capital. So a lot of these have done the affordable housing fee, just like you have, separately from the other fee categories. This calculation excludes affordable housing for that purpose. But not all cities approve them all in one big bundle. Sometimes they go piecemeal, and some of the components are approved more recently than others. In this case, some of them are kind of old, which means they might be updating their fee program pretty quickly here, which most likely means they'll go up.
Can I just add one thing to that? Let me add one thing to that. So most cities, including what we are proposing with our comprehensive program, is in the ordinance implementing an indexing language into the ordinance. So every year we would propose to index or increase the fee level by some percent, like the consumer price index, like a CPI increase indexing assumption. Most jurisdictions have that as well, and so we do think it's apples to apples comparison in showing, even though South City may have implemented their fees a couple years ago, if they have the indexing language in their ordinance, it does show an apples to apples comparison. And then also that's why the law does require us to reevaluate and produce another nexus within a 5-year time period to sort of rebaseline and reevaluate those fees at least on a 5-year period.
Thank you. And then the other question would be, for example, I think with residential, how did you come up with the number of, you kept it the maximum number. Why not something that is, the ranges for each of the cities are really all over the place. Maybe not so much with that one, but that one still seems quite high, especially coming out of the gate.
Well, for residential, we are recommending it at the average of the peer cities, as with industrial, retail, and hotel. And so, I mean, I guess the main reason is that the Nexus study does include a number of capital facility and infrastructure projects that staff feel need to be implemented over the next 20, 30 years. And so we know that development impact fee revenue is a critical funding source to make sure that some of these capital projects will be implemented. Without it, we have to find the revenue sources from someplace else. And so we don't want the fee to go too low. It needs to be enough so that we can actually deliver on some of these projects.
Can I just add one question about the range? One of the reasons why there's a little bit of a range is that because there's a single-family fee. Many cities have a differentiate between single-family fee and multifamily fee, and even further between, say, an in-law unit or other types of units. So there's a wide range. That's more common in cities that have a lot of different types of development going forward. I think in this particular case, we decided just to have one fee level because you're probably not getting that much new single family being developed in the future. So we just have one. So the range is usually the single family plays the highest. Usually is the thought in most other cities, but here you only have one. So if you see the low end of that range, it's probably because it's a range between single family, multifamily, as well as other types of units, accessory dwelling units and whatnot.
And then my final question is, what is typically proposed in, staff, council approves the fees in terms of, at what point does, you use the Mills Park, for example, development, at what point would they be grandfathered in? Is there something that council would need to also approve on something like that, or is that something that staff would negotiate through?
Sure. So, Javon Grogan, City Manager. Staff is not recommending a grandfathering in of the fees. We are recommending that any developments in the entitlement process that do not have their final entitlements by the time the fee is adopted pay the fees. That said, I do think that there are challenges with some specific projects in the pipeline. Mills Park has been brought up tonight, and conversations have already been had, and we welcome continuing those conversations.
And just for clarification, too, because a question came up, and then, of course, I want to hear from my colleagues, is we're not talking about, of course, just for clarification. Somebody said, so you mean if I remodel or if I add on to my house? Or I'm saying, no, this is new development. But to most folks, they don't understand that. So could you just, for the clarification for anyone listening, to explain that?
Sure. Yes, it is. It isn't about a remodel, and it's not about an addition to a house. For example, let's take the house. The house fee is based on a per residential unit. It's not based on square footage or other things. So you can theoretically add even a new, room to your house, and you wouldn't get charged a new fee. If you have a separate structure, if you put a new unit behind your existing, you could theoretically, but the ordinance can work out the details of how you deal with some of those issues. Usually, for example, accessory dwelling units get a lower reduction. But again, it's new development only. Even in the case of a retail building, let's say, that's been vacant for 6 months and a new tenant comes in and does a bunch of improvements, they aren't charged the fee because that's an existing use that's already there, and you're just rehabbing an existing use. That's not new development per se. That's improving an existing facility. So it's really intended to be focused on new development, additional incremental square footage and units.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your comments and thank you for the report. We have an old city, and our city needs repairs. And if we do not have these fees, which it seems like a number of cities do, then how are we going to pay for it? We're not. My first question is, which neighboring cities do not have development impact fees? Just neighboring.
Not aware of many in the Bay Area that don't have impact fees. I'll have to do some research on that, but not many.
The previous question regarding the residential, I think I would like to see it broken down so we can do a more of an apples to apples comparison for the apartments, condos, single family. Currently, we don't have anything in the pipeline, but there are a number of large lots around San Bruno that at some point may. So it'd be interesting to be able to have a fee that's really more equitable or within a range that is being applied across our neighboring cities. Just an interesting thing that I picked up on, at least to me, on page 10 of the presentation, that the police vehicles are included, but fire trucks aren't. I just thought that was kind of odd. Is there a reason why?
We purchased the police vehicles, whereas we lease the fire trucks. This can pay for capital equipment or capital projects and equipment.
Okay. When we're talking about this build-out, are we talking including the transit corridor plan, or how? Help me understand how big that build-out is, and where is it? Help me. Can you give us?
Yeah. So we used a couple of sources to look at projections. One of them was your general plan. One was the ABAG MTC projections, and a couple other sources. And we took I think it was a 20-year time frame. The amount of development doesn't have to happen in 20 years. There's no law to it. So we looked at reasonable projections out there for residential and employment growth, and we just use that as a basis of your growth projections. It's not a precise science, because you may grow faster or slower. No one knows for sure how far and how fast you're going to grow. But it looks out, I think your general plan's a pretty good source for that, and as well as other projections. We took an average just so that we weren't too heavily reliant on one source. And I think in the Nexus report that you have, I think it's table 3, I'm going to say, that shows you those projections that we relied upon. It is table 3. Yeah. So we used ABAG, and then we did the model, your transportation model, and we used your general plan transit corridors model. So those are the 3 sources we looked at. Took an average, and that's essentially where we came up with the number.
Okay. For the $42 million in new parks, so that money that is in the report, that has to go to a brand new park? It can't be used to fix a park, or?
It can be used to fix a park. It can be used to improve the existing parkland, and that's usually how it is done. That's correct.
In park and in facilities, that includes street trees and medians and
yes,
all the like?
Yes.
Okay. Those are my questions for now. Thank you.
Michael?
Thank you. So, when Marty brought up the police cars, it got me thinking. So, we're talking about a one-time fee that we assess, and if we do pay for something like, say, a portion of a police car that has a very short asset life, and then we're on the hook then for replacing that. So we kind of make a short-term commitment based on these fees, or we make a long-term commitment based on a one-time fee, and it just struck me as odd that we would embark on that, just being that we're not going to have a continual stream that could support it.
Can I just clarify that?
Yeah.
We usually use a life cycle cost approach. So we would take, an average life cycle of let's give an example, police car, say 10 years, and we say this fee program is over a 20-year period, so that would be 2 police cars during this.
2 police cars. So
it's kind of a, we're using a life cycle, so it's not you're just buying one police car. It's actually a life cycle approach.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
That's it. Just really quick. The maximum potential would be about 29%, which was within that. And so with the staff recommendation, what percent does that make that?
So we did not calculate what the revenue projection would be at the staff recommended fee levels. We could go back and do that. We'd be happy to do that. It will be substantially lower than the maximum allowable revenue projection.
Okay, thank you.
Not a good word, Keith, substantially.
Other Comments, questions, direction from council for staff? Anybody?
I was just going to say, good report and excellent information. We have to go down this direction. I think that's, Councilmember Medina said as well. So I appreciate the information that was provided. It's very clear.
And I do want to give one of our former colleagues a little bit of, that was former Vice Mayor Ibarra, who brought up a couple years ago about that this was an item that needed to come forward and needed to be addressed. So this has been at least discussed and worked on, and so appreciate both of you with your detail and information. City Manager and Director, do you have enough information or guidance from council this time?
Yes.
Director?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Irene?
Well, I'm a little concerned from the people, from the public, what they're asking and what their concerns are about building, not making the project happen at all,
Well, that's why.
reducing the quality.
Well, that's why we had asked that they've already been in discussions with staff, is to continue with that on the signature project. Is that the one you're referencing? We're talking about a project.
Yes, but talking to staff, they were saying staff is not recommending grandfathering in anything. So
What?
are you asking?
No. The City Manager, I'm sorry, Irene.
Sure. So staff has been in conversations with Signature. We would like to continue those conversations. And this actually brings up a really good point. Just because the City Council adopts impact fees, that does not mean that whether it's today or 5 years from now, if there's a specific project with a specific consideration that the council can't consider a specific
exemption.
Development agreement with that to have a different impact fee calculation. I don't know, frankly, where we will land with Signature Properties, but it absolutely will be a catalyst project for the city and something that has been worked on and we would all like to see happen. However, establishing impact fees is not a new conversation in the city of San Bruno. The project has been going on for just about as long as the Signature Property, the 2.5 years that the Signature Properties project has been talked about. And as you can see from the benchmarking information, a lot of the cities that we benchmarked against in the peninsula have comprehensive impact fees and they are significantly developed. And so we do not agree that impact fees will stifle development. I don't think that that's true when you look at development along the cities in the peninsula that have significant development. That said, we want to continue to further the conversations with Signature Properties.
And also as a reminder too, is because one of the members up there sitting here tonight have to recuse themselves on that project, so I'm trying to be mindful of that as well.
Oh yes, I'm not signaling out a signature project. I'm just discussing about, in general, grandfathering in projects that are already in the pipeline.
Okay.
Since staff did not recommend them, but as a council, I would encourage us to
You're gonna have the
say,
discussions.
keep the discussions open
As indicated.
because I'm concerned about quality. I don't want a developer to cut quality because they have to pay such high fee or what some people may be considered high fees or however it works out. I want us to be mindful that we have quality projects and that we are looking at prevailing wage and union, all those things that we as
We've
a
all
city
discussed those,
have,
yes.
have stood for. So as long as those are in the works, that's fine.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. If not, thank you all for your time. Then thank you, staff. And we'll move on to item 8, comments from council members. Irene.
Hi, thank you.
Please.
I would like to encourage everyone who has holiday lights to make sure they are on this weekend. The Beautification Task Force members will be traveling around and taking pictures of them, and then they will be displayed over the Christmas weekend, and I think the weekend after as well on Channel 1. So if you have that out, or if you specifically want us to attend, either cable, email the address to cable TV or to Irene O'Connell at the City Council. So thank you.
Absolutely. Please.
So our next council meeting on Christmas is been canceled, in case anybody didn't know, so nobody show up here on Christmas Day, because the lights will be off probably. But in all seriousness, I wanted to wish everybody a wonderful holiday season. I'm really hopeful for our future. This development impact fee is one thing that we need to do as we're moving forward to make sure that the costs of rebuilding and maintaining our city isn't solely on the backs of our residents. So I'd like to, again, thank staff for that and encourage everybody to be safe out there. So thank you.
Michael.
Okay. I won't make a speech, but I did want to wish staff a very happy holiday and public a very happy holiday, and my colleagues. It's been a great year, and I'm looking forward to another one.
And then finally, I two things is I want to echo also to everyone about the holidays. However, first of all, I also want to thank Vice Mayor Laura Davis for her first year as being welcomed to the council and then being appointed as vice mayor and having to run some of the Bay Hill specific plans because of my being recused, and being very helpful to me in April when we had the active shooter situation, and being very supportive and assisting. So I want to thank you for that, and thank you for your first year and as vice mayor. And then also, finally, as others have said, I'm going to say it, but I wish everybody a Merry Christmas. I wish everybody a happy, safe, enjoyable New Year. And I want to thank the staff for your year. I know some have only been here a month or a few months, but I want to thank everybody and wish all of you and your families the very best, and best wishes for the new year for all of us. With that, we'll go ahead and adjourn the next regular City Council meeting, which will be held on January 8th, 2019, 7 o'clock right here at the San Bruno Senior Center. Everybody, best wishes and happy holidays.